Here is why your calling will always be bigger than your comfort zone. Let's talk about it as we recap yesterday's sermon. Well, Brett preached excellently on the calling of Peter. We are now in a series called Peter, and we are following the steps of a disciple because that's how we can learn how to grow ourselves. The first thing that happens to a disciple is being called by God. Everybody who follows Jesus knows this moment. That's where I first heard. That's where I first knew. That's where I first felt God calling me to follow him in Christ. Now, Peter follows Jesus, and it begins to be a life of constantly stepping out of the comfort zone. The first thing that Jesus does with him, he says, "Can I use your boat?" Okay, little inconvenience, right? And he uses the boat of Peter in Luke 5 as a preaching platform. God is going to use your life as a platform. And then the next thing that Jesus then says is like, "Let's catch some fish." And then Peter says, "Well, we tried all night. We've done it." So that's his reality. But then he says, "Nevertheless, at your word, we will do it." And that is stepping out into the unknown, launching into the deep, like Jesus says in Luke 5. And that's what they do. Peter always follows the call of God to step out of the comfort zone into the unknown, launching into the deep, stepping out. They catch so many fish. And then Jesus says, "Well, come and follow me, and I will make you fisher of men." And he, again, has to leave behind the biggest catch of his whole life. It doesn't say he sold it, doesn't say he made some profit. He just leaves the biggest find that he ever had to follow Jesus. Then fast forward to Matthew 14, where he is now in the storm. How did he come into the storm? Well, Jesus said, "Let's go to the other side. You guys cross it. We'll catch you later," basically. And they were experienced boatsmen, same place, same lake. They were probably already seeing the storm building because an hour later, they're in the complete center of the storm. That storm will go on for the whole night. And it's when their strength is failing and where they're desperate because they think they are going to die. It's when Jesus is walking on the water towards them. That's where Peter risks it again. They are afraid, but Jesus says, "Do not be afraid. It is I. It is me." Peter says, "If it is you, call me out." Bid me to come, in other translations. Peter steps out of the water because Jesus says, "Come." Peter has this, he understands faith is spelled R-I-S-K. He risks it to follow Jesus again. And obviously he sinks because suddenly he doesn't have his eyes on Jesus anymore. He sees the storm, he sees the water, he said, "This is impossible." His faith fails, boom, and he goes under. But that's the moment where he's the closest to Jesus, and Jesus calls and pulls him out of the water and brings him to safety, calms the storm. And again, like in Luke 5, they have a revelation of who he truly is, and they are afraid of the Son of God who is with them in the same boat. Risking it with God will give you a revelation who God is, and it will increase your fear of God because you truly understand that he truly has made heaven and earth, and he truly reigns above everything. Following Jesus has always the connotation of lifting yourself up from comfort, going into the risk zone, going into the learning zone, going into new things, and growing with God because you just want to be where he is, where he calls you to be. Now, it's easy to make an application from this. What has become your comfort zone? What patterns, what rhythms in your life have become so comforting that you don't even question them anymore? Where have you become lulled into the boat, basically, that thinking that this is the safe zone, forgetting that where you're closest to God, that's where you're the safest? That would be my application. if you're in a connect group, discuss this together and read those two passages. See where there are parallels, because there's so many that link those texts together and they talk about our own life with God. All right. God bless you guys. Have a wonderful week.